It's TikTok famous podcast time here today with Lisa P. She's here with all her amazing homeschooling and fashion and politics and everything in between. So stay with us.
You're listening to the TikTok Famous Podcast, where viral fame meets raw reality. Join your host, Meredith Willits, as she dives deep with your favorite creators to uncover the real stories behind the scroll, the highs, the lows, the algorithm chaos, and everything in between. This is not your average interview. This is the TikTok Famous Podcast.
It's me, Lisa P.
Hi. Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you today because you are I wore a blouse today in honor of my fashion icon that you are. Everyone just please follow her for her fashion and politics and homeschooling and everything in between but the fashion.
I love a good outfit and a good accessory.
You are, what is the word? Conundrum? You are a conundrum because you are a Southern belle. You are a fashion icon. You are politically just a bulldog, in my opinion, just powerhouse. You talk about women's issues like no other, so eloquently, but yet so savage. So thank you for being here.
I love that. Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you today. This is so much fun.
Yeah. So as I ask everybody, because this is what this show is all about, why in the world would you put yourself out there on TikTok and why'd you start recording?
So I feel like every over 30 something millennial, during COVID, I was born and I had never gotten on TikTok. I'd never heard about TikTok. I had heard whisperings about it when it was Musically, I believe, for the young people. And then all of a sudden, because we all had this time on our hands, why not download a new app? Why not see what's going on over there? And it became this really fun outlet. And I just started posting silly little videos, trends, music stuff, the stuff that was going on back then. And it really kind of took on its own thing after a while. It kind of filled this really interesting gap in the lack of social interaction at the time.
Yeah.
And I really never looked back after that.
Yeah, I think I was talking on the last episode with Jessica Anderson, and she said she started with her kids the same way. It was COVID.
Mhm.
Let's make fun videos and do the trends. And then it just kind of finds you. It finds this voice inside of you. Is that how it kind of felt for you?
Yeah. I never used social media in this way before. I feel I had a Facebook and I had a private family only, Instagram account, that sort of stuff. But it was very millennial coded. It was not participating in the community of the internet in that way. And when TikTok first kind of became a thing I was using, all of a sudden it was conversations with people I didn't know. It was discussions I'd never heard of. It was getting this window into people's lives that I never would have seen before, because previously social media was your friends and family.
Yeah.
So I was looking at people's camping photos and wedding albums and things like that. But these were all people that I knew in real life. Being able to participate with the greater community of the internet became this thing that was very addictive in a way. It was very interesting to me.
Yeah. And what I think is so cool is all that I have learned. The language around mental health, the language, the gaslighting and the love bombing and the trauma bonding, all of these things that
together for 5 years now.
Literally, we're all in group therapy. But the language, when you learn this language, right, it allows you to go, oh, I've had that happen to me, but I just thought I was losing my mind, or I just thought they were a jerk. And now you realize
it's unique to my family, my life, my experiences, not this very well observed phenomenon.
And I think that it gives you this place to say, I'm not alone, especially with what you're doing, because you homeschool.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. This is our second year. So we're still new into homeschooling, but I don't think it's something I would have considered if it wasn't for TikTok and like seeing other people do it.
Oh, really? So this kind of like helped you see what that looked like in real life.
Absolutely. I mean, I was one of those moms, especially during COVID. My daughter did virtual schooling, and that was a nightmare, like it was for pretty much everybody. And I remember telling people, like, oh my God, I can't believe people choose to do this. I can't believe people homeschool. I would never, like, this is awful. And slowly but surely, I feel like my algorithm was like hearing my thoughts and was like, haha, but wait. And then showed me people who actually do homeschool and what their life looks like. And it looks nothing like virtual schooling. And
Mm.
it intrigued me enough to really look into it.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the thing though that especially TikTok is like you said, it invites you into another planet, another world. I mean, it has taught me everything at, 52 years old about racism. It's taught
Mhm.
me everything about religion. It's taught me everything about the reality of this country. So being the person that you show yourself as, right? Like you are on social media, which I have this feeling that that's just who you are. A lot of people show up one way and I just feel that you are you and you can't fake it even if you tried. That's just how I get what I get from you.
Yeah, I don't have a, like a
For
marketing bone in my like, I couldn't present myself in, like, a different way, which is why you'll see videos of me, like, fully dressed, and then you'll see videos of me, like, in my bathrobe with no makeup on because,
yeah,
like, it's where I'm at today.
right. It's like I have an idea. Hold on. I'm wearing a bathrobe.
I can't plan my content, I can't be more strategic about it. It
Yeah,
just it is what you get.
same. So how is it? Okay, so you have amassed almost what around 800,000 followers across social media.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
that's a
well,
lot.
yeah, like, that's pretty on
That's like
point.
a city. That's a city, right? That's a good sized city,
I
which is
have to
weird.
remind myself of that all the time because when I'm making videos, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm home, I'm in my house. People expect like that I'm like this extrovert or I'm super social. I'm not. I'm in my house talking to my phone. Like like the fact that anywhere from like 300 people, if the algorithm hates me, to like several million people could see what I'm saying is like something that I don't think humans can actually compute in their
Yeah.
head. Like, that's too many people.
Yeah. And it's so funny for me, anyways, when I create for the words and the message, knowing it, like you're saying, it could hit or it could just fall flat. And it's like, it's so frustrating when something that you know is so brilliant falls flat. It just is like, oh my gosh, it was such a, like so many people need to hear this. But what is it like for you having that many followers in a southern, you're in the Charleston area? Yes.
Carolina, yep.
Yep. And then you dress like 1950s? Is that like
1950s inspired. I try like never
inspired?
to make it look like I'm full on like cosplaying the 1950s, but I just
Yeah.
love that era. I love the silhouettes. I love like I love the look of it and it just works for my body type and like try and keep a little inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, the earrings, the hair that you wear, your picture for this episode is like with the bandana, like you're just everything, but your views politically are very liberal.
Yes, yeah, they are.
And so how does that live? How does that exist in the South? And like I said at the beginning, you're just like this person that kind of is a conundrum.
Yes, I'm hard for people to figure out, especially if you're first meeting me, because I think, especially being in the South, I think when you look at like a feminine presenting homeschooling stay-at-home mom white lady, like the assumption is pretty safe that she's super conservative, right? So
Yeah.
like I don't hate people for having that assumption because I would have that assumption. But I am a transplant. I'm originally from New York.
Mm.
My family is originally from Canada. I grew up in a Democratic era. I grew up in like Clinton era Democrat New York. Okay. For better or worse. All right. Like we know more things now, but like
Right.
everyone around me was super liberal. So I took that for granted. I kind of always thought even people who were like fiscally conservative were like socially chill.
Yeah.
Then I moved to the South. So like, no, that's not exactly everybody's belief system. And I've really had to reconcile with that like and that's probably one of the best things, in my opinion, about somebody traveling or moving to different parts of the country is you realize that like your point of view is definitely not the norm in a lot of different places. So when I first moved here, it was a shock, like absolute culture shock for me. I grew up in the suburbs of Manhattan. I grew up going into the city. It's a very multicultural area. It is a very like I don't remember anyone talking about politics from the right side of the aisle. So like it was a completely different place. And living in the South, first of all, I was like usually most people's like first Jewish person they had met. So like that
Mm,
was really interesting. All of a sudden
yeah.
I was diverse, which I'm like, okay, that's that says a lot more about you than it says about me. Um, so like
But if they're
I
not exposed to it, I mean, I remember we moved to New Jersey, South Jersey, and I think it was my daughter got invited to a bat mitzvah, and I was like, "What?" I had to like Google it.
yeah,
What's a bat mitzvah? I was from Midwest Ohio.
yeah,
I
there's not a lot
didn't.
of us out there.
Yeah, it was wild. And then I moved to Jersey, and it was like time to go to a bar mitzvah. Get out. Like time to go to a bat. And I'm like, now I know
Yes.
the language. Now I know
The
the jargon.
quinceañeras and the sweet 16s and the bar and bat
Yep.
mitzvahs, like this was just part of the regular like social
Yep.
lexicon of where I grew up because I grew up around a lot of Catholic people. So like there was just this understand like our school got off for Yom Kippur and the high holidays. So like when I came here and I was like, oh, okay, y'all have like this is not how this operates. Everyone here is very like evangelical, very religiously Christian, very conservative. It was just a completely different social aspect. And I have to say, it was also a lot different when I first moved here, at least like in the forefront. So I feel like since Trump's first presidency, it has become increasingly difficult to be this like liberal person in the South. I feel like before that, you just kind of voted. And I think, wherever you sit on either side of the aisle, I think everyone can admit that things have gotten more contentious and divisive in the past, like, I don't know, 5, 10 years ish.
Yeah.
So it was a different time back then, but it was still a massive learning curve for me to like realize the situations I was in and where everybody landed. And luckily, I like happened to meet my husband like right off the plane, like in Charleston. And him and all of his friends are like liberal hippie surfer kids. So like we had a nice little bubble.
Yeah. And how does your husband deal with you being famous, TikTok famous, social media famous with this, very forward public? Do your friends know? Do your kids' friends know? How do you deal with that?
No, like it's not something that I ever like advertise, like, hey guys, I'm doing TikTok. Like, because I do in my head, in my delusional mind, think like, oh, this is just for me. I just,
Mm, yeah.
yeah, I'm just making my little videos in my little house.
Right.
No, just use these. but yeah, the weirder thing is when people will not mention it to me, but then I see that they like started following me and I'm like, oh, now they know everything I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't come up in like conversation. Funny enough, one of my close friends now, she like we had this really strange like meet cute at our sons were in school together and we met in person. She was the school mom, so like I knew of who she was and I knew like her son's name and I knew our kids were kind of friends, but it was still COVID, so like I never got to meet her in person. And when I finally got to meet her in person, she was like, "Wait, I know you're on my TikTok. What are you doing? What are you doing here?" And I was like, I'm my son's mom." And she's like, "You're his mom?" And I like it was
Ah,
just this hilarious. Like she knew me from the internet, but we had already been conversing in real life. And then when the dots got put together, it was almost like the first date friendship meeting had already happened because now you know what you're getting.
yeah, literally. Like I always tell my husband, if you want to know what's going on in my head, go watch my videos. Because I am like you. Like I tend to be more, what do they call it? Like an introverted extrovert. So like I can put it on. Like I can do this, right? I can do the thing. I can hold a room for 2 hours, whatever. And then I like scurry off back. You know what I mean? Like,
My whole
yeah, into my cave. But yeah, like I tend to not be a sharer. And I don't know if maybe my ideas
I'm
weren't
a
necessary.
loudmouth person too, but I've got to like it's like not first meeting. I always tell
Yeah.
people like how you see me online is how I talk to like my closest friends or people I feel
Right.
completely safe like expressing myself with. So like
Yeah.
meet me in person, that's not necessarily the version of me you're going to get. You're going to get like first meeting polite, like barrier,
Yeah.
social barrier, right? Like
Yeah.
as you would with any first meeting of a person, you just now know like everything I've ever said. So it's different.
Yeah, it is so funny. Like, so when you were a kid, so like when I was a kid, I wonder this about, and I think that's gonna be my question for pretty much everyone, so it's not just you. Were you a person that was maybe not listened to as a kid, and now you've got this great place to dump? Or, like, the things that you were said.
Yeah. So I was a very quiet kid. I was a humongous people pleaser. I was very quiet. I kind of came out of my shell and came into a little bit of my voice in college when I got around like a really solid group of female friends who were much more extroverted than I was. Um, and that was maybe the first time I had found a voice, but it was still very juvenile. It was very I was still very self-centered. I was still figuring out who I was. I like to say if you knew me before, my frontal lobe developed, like we're just gonna say that that was a phase, okay? Um, but yeah, I was very shy. I wouldn't, especially with like authority figures or being combative in any way. Um, I would absolutely never speak my piece ever.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that you ask people that because yeah, I didn't really have a voice as a child.
Because the
Uh,
phone has to listen.
well, it has to listen and it can't talk back, so like that helps. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's where the comments come in, and that's where the thing about being a creator is you are putting this out into a completely unregulated sphere of public opinion, right? You don't get to choose who's going to see it. Sometimes the wrong people see it.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't get to uh, you don't get to control how people interact with your content, and that has been a really big lesson. I think every creator's had that lesson for sure. I don't think you can continue making content if you don't get over that in some way. Develop a thick skin, stop looking at comments, whatever your coping strategy is. Um, but I think for me, as somebody who is always scared of like confrontation, it's given me almost like this safe space to like
Yeah.
stretch my like cojones a little bit, be like, I don't have to actually listen to you. You're a stranger on the internet who doesn't know me. So like, you can kind of find your own voice and realize whose opinion and what combative comments you're willing to give your energy to. And it's definitely helped me in my real life too.
Well, I think one thing too is that I've learned anyways, and it's not everyone has to get me. Not everyone has to understand
Oh,
or agree with.
I have a
Right.
massive problem with people misunderstanding me. I hate being misunderstood
Yep.
because I feel like I articulate my position and my thoughts really well and very thoughtfully. So if somebody like, especially people online who can just purposefully, take it as like something negative, purposefully misunderstand you, willfully misunderstand you. Oh, that's my least favorite thing.
It's
Yeah.
the worst. And then you try to make a follow-up video and
Like,
4
no,
people see it.
listen. Yeah.
And you're like, "Wait, back up."
Yeah.
Why is the one that's getting, like, growing legs, have 100,000 views, and the one that I'm really, like, dialing it in. Yeah, so I think that, like, it's such a cathartic piece to go through the social media and find your legs and find your voice and get that thick skin when you are out in the real world, so to speak, and you look the way you look, you dress the way you dress, the 50s inspired white woman, female presenting in the South. How do you deal with, because I had this situation happen to me yesterday, honestly, and I'm in Chicagoland. How do you deal with someone maybe assuming that you are on the right, that you are maybe okay with racism, and that they don't know you like that who you are, you know what I mean? And they think they can
So
say those things.
So, in my opinion, that has to come with a lot of grace. I am okay with people making that assumption. It's my responsibility to make sure they know I'm not that person,
Yeah.
which means a random person on the street, it will never go past that surface level assumption. People that I have acquaintanceships with, it's up to me to stand firm in who I am and express that. Um, Especially when it comes to, like, I go to a lot of influencer events and things like that in Charleston, and there are always Black women, there are always people of color, there are also always members of the LGBTQ community. It's my responsibility, with all of the privileges that I occupy, to let them know that I'm not that way, or at least that I am an active participant
Yeah.
in anti-racism and anti-bigotry. And that's just the onus of responsibility, that I feel like isn't really that much work on my part. It's the
Yeah. But
least
it
I can.
is weird. Like, I did have a situation yesterday, like I said, and it was not the right place. It was at a kids event. So I just kinda, smiled and went, "Hmm."
Made
I
like
just
a comment that they thought you would be, like, cool with.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how many people think that you're gonna be cool with it. Like, "Oh, you live in a white suburban neighborhood, you're white, you're gonna be cool with basically any type of ism."
Yeah.
And it is very bizarre. I sometimes wish everyone would just would follow me on social media so you knew exactly where I stood.
10-second intro clip so you, like, can put
Like,
it in your
"Here,
phone.
here's where I stand on everything." So, have you gotten yourself into any pickles of bad comments or people coming after you, or where you're like, "Oh shit, I really have done something not intentionally on social."
Like, the funny thing is it's not the stuff you would think it is. Like, the most hate I have ever gotten on any video was one where I talked about setting boundaries with, like, boomer grandparents. Like, that was
Mm.
the one that I got the most hate, because it was all the angry, boomer
Boomers.
grandparents who, like, aren't getting what they want from their grandkids, just like, "Ah!" Like, putting it all onto me for my video. And the funny thing is, like, me and my parents, like, see, it was just about setting, like, healthy boundaries within a relationship. It wasn't like, "You should cut off, you're terrible." You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't
Yeah.
even that bad, and that's the one I got the most hate on. The political ones, or the ones where I talk about, racism, or especially I've really started to kind of delve into, because of how I present. I talk a lot about the trad wife trends, and I talk about feminist issues, because I don't ever want somebody to, like, look at me and get it twisted that I think, like, oh, women should be in the home. Like, no, absolutely not. And we're going to talk about why, and we're going to talk about the history behind it, and we're going to talk about domestic labor, and we're going to talk about racism, and we're going to talk about slavery, and how slavery transitioned to Jim Crow, and how, like, all of these things all coexist together, and they're all part of this propaganda of the housewife and of the stay-at-home mom, and of this, like, propaganda picture of wifehood and motherhood and stuff like that. So I've gotten really into talking about that, and those are the ones I'll get a, like, reasonable amount of hate on, but it's usually people being like, "Ugh, why do you have to make everything, like, why do you
Race
have to,
based.
yeah, like, why do you have to make everything so about color? And why do you have to talk about," I'm like, "This is just history, okay?
Yeah.
Like, if it's your feelings, that's something you should unpack." Um,
And you just had a hot take on Meghan Markle. I loved your video talking about, like,
Thank you.
how arranging flowers,
Yeah.
it looks domestic, but it's not, scrubbing, baseball pants and, picking up
It
dog
was
poop.
dressing of domesticity. That's, like, that's the, and you see it all the time on, like, okay, so when I first had my daughter, I feel like it was like the Pinterest moms, right? Like, that was back in 2014. It was like prime Instagram perfect mom with the Pinterest. Like, I made, a tiered Jello mold. You know what I mean? Like, for every holiday. And I just remember drowning, being like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, that's not real. And I'm sure it's partly real for some people at some time, but it's not the whole picture. So
Yeah.
when you're looking at domestic tasks and what's being shown, it's really important to have that discernment. of what's being shown and why. And somebody made the connection with Meghan Markle when I was talking about the history of colorism within like mom culture and domesticity and like especially domestic laborers. Somebody was like, well, then why did people hate Meghan Markle doing domestic tasks if like traditionally, these white women were having black and brown women do these domestic tasks? I'm like, she's not doing those. She's showing the Martha Stewart of it all.
Yeah.
Like that's the performance. The performance is what she's doing. She's doing it great. Love it. But it's not new. It's just new to see this type of woman doing it. And that's what people have an issue with. People
Yeah,
don't.
and it's so interesting because like I had a bunch of stuff go viral about the trad wife content. I think I actually recommended you a TV show reached out to me. I think I actually recommended you to for them to speak to. If not, I'll have to remember, but I'm pretty sure I told them about you.
Oh, nice.
Um, but sidebar, but I think it's so interesting that we're talking about this because you could embody what a lot of people would think is a trad wife, the ballerina farms and the all of those creators that show up looking cosplay, not
Yeah.
inspired necessarily as the 19 they are literally trying to embody the
Oh, there's one,
1950s.
I'm not gonna say names, but she bothers me a ton, but I'm not
Y-
gonna say names. But she full cosplay of the 1950s, full like, "You should serve your husband, it's the
Yep.
greatest honor. God put women on earth to serve their husbands and their Lord,
Yeah.
husband of the household," and I'm just like, "Ugh." Just
Have a
because
martini ready at 5:30, right? Lift your
yeah,
lipstick,
homeless
get your face ready.
people, the
Yeah.
whole thing. Like this was a lie back then. Like this was never true. I mean, it might have been true for a very small percentage, but most of this like cosplay of trad wives comes from propaganda and marketing material from the 1950s. It wasn't necessarily their like actual day-to-day lived. This is the June Cleaver of it all, you know?
And
It's
they had a servant
yeah,
and they were on
domestic
benzos.
laborers for upper middle class families were almost standard. Like, and I'm not talking about working class families. People always get in my comments. They're like, my grandma didn't. I was like, then she's not who I was talking about.
Right.
Like, but upper middle class and upper class white women had easy, number one, they could all own a home, right? And live on one income. Um, Houses and manufacturers started to make kitchens and cars and vacuums and everything with the idea that a woman was at home all the time. Doesn't mean it was always the wife, and it doesn't mean it was always the wife alone. A lot of keeping up appearances is also like being able to hire a domestic. You know, there's there's this like status of it, and sorry, not to like completely divulge onto my soapbox,
No,
but
yeah, I love it.
one of the most recent videos I said is like, this is going to be really interesting because the way our parents grew up, the economy our parents grew up in is not the economy that, let's call it like millennials, middle-aged people are living in now, right? So if you were upper middle class back in the 80s and 90s, your standard of living looked a lot different than it does now if you're considered upper middle class, regardless of like where you fall on the income stream. Um, and what we're seeing is more and more of these like conveniences and luxuries, like having domestic staff members. And I'm not talking about like the once a month cleaning lady. That's not the same job, right? I'm talking about
No.
like every day in your home, organizing, picking up the kids, making dinners, making
No,
lunches, like
no.
that sort of thing is going away. Like it's not accessible to
Yeah.
most people, even in the upper middle classes anymore, where it used to be. So what we're seeing is this like uptick of women having to figure it out, the stay-at-home moms having to figure it out with less and with less skill
And less time
and less time. Yes,
and
because
more pressure. So and you need to have your lipstick on and you need to have your skirt on. And
and
what's
you
so
also
interesting,
need to go do a 9 to 5 because now we're all, not all, but like a lot of us, two income households.
two
So
income
like
households.
it's bananas.
Yeah. And look good doing it. And so that's what I love about you is because it's almost like, "Oh, hi, check out my skirt, check out my earrings, check out my headband, and PS, I'm gonna sit here and tell you why it's all a crock of shit."
Yeah. Oh, it's
Like,
all like the whole because I never aspired to be a stay-at-home mom. Like this was never like I grew up in a very like education centered community. And I feel like the Jewish community is very much like that, along with like many other immigrant communities.
Yeah.
Education, higher education, and like white collar jobs were really like the only thing that is considered socially acceptable generally
Yeah.
from like the culture I grew up in. So when I became a stay-at-home mom, it was almost like this, like, oh, because I went to college, I'm educated. I could have gone to like get another degree and get a higher, but I wanted to cook. That by itself was like kind of taboo, like kind of unheard of, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a white collar profession. So I grew up under the mindset of I ended up a stay-at-home mom because of circumstance and life choices, like consequences of me choosing a job where I didn't make a lot of money was that when push came to shove and daycare was expensive, guess who wasn't going back to work? Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and that's a common experience with millennial women and Gen X women, and like, um, but it wasn't like I had this halo about my head that this is like my calling in life. It just worked out this way. I'm still
Yeah.
doing the same job as these trad wives. I'm just doing it with a much different ideology behind it.
Yeah. And like, I love when you talk about, because I think so many people don't get the difference between real, labor, household labor, and performative. And the performative would be showing me baking bread and arranging flowers. For the listeners that aren't watching you on TikTok, and hopefully now will, it's me, Lisa P. And actually like sitting there in like sweatpants and a sweatshirt with no bra, folding laundry on a Monday morning, and packing lunches, with bags under your eyes and your hair all out. Like there's a very different thing between what you can do and what has to be done, and how that's played out on social media, and the pressure that that puts on all women
Yeah.
to bake bread, because I'm not baking bread. I love
We
everybody,
all
but they
bake
do have.
bread, but like I'm also not gonna record it because I'm busy. Like I got my hand, I'm making the bread. Like I'm also
Right.
not like it's I find it so interesting because right after, and I saw that, I think because I had my first two kids, like 2014, 2016, the like social media sphere was so different, especially when it like embodied motherhood at that time. I firmly had kids in the Pinterest perfect mom era and then watched the like hot mess mom phenomenon. So like I feel like my content shows both.
Yeah.
There are days when I am putting my house back together, running around with my kids. You may not see a post from me for a couple days because we got stuff going on. Like I can't live in social media in one or the other because it's all happening all at once.
Yeah.
Uh, some days I get up and get dressed. For example, getting up and get dressed today, that means I didn't like schlep my kids to the gym this morning because on gym days, I usually am not getting dressed that day because I
Yeah.
lost that time because I've got to homeschool and I've got to do laundry and I've got to do pickups and stuff like that. And those are the days you'll see me off the cuff with no makeup on. I feel like I want to empower women to take care of themselves, to feel beautiful, to realize like your life isn't over and you're not done being beautiful and sexy and powerful once you become a mother. Like, because you can get stuck in that place.
Hmm.
You get stuck in I've got milk all over me. I don't feel good about myself. Like, you can get stuck there and it is a negative mental place. Like, it is, or at least it was for me.
Yeah.
So getting out of that and getting dressed, maybe not every day, but once in a while, remind yourself who's a baddie, right?
Right.
Remind yourself who you are. Like you are still a woman who deserves to feel beautiful, even though you are a mother. So I very much want that to be the message that comes through with the fashion stuff and the beauty stuff that I do, because it all comes from a place of like self confidence, self love, and like putting that effort into yourself because you deserve it, because it's so easy to put yourself last once you become a mom.
So easy. I was just talking about that with Jessica last week. I love everything that you're doing. I think that you're the perfect person to be showing women. It's the all the facets. Like I see you. It sounds so crazy, but it's like I'm baking bread. I'm going to go out and do some skeet shooting, and then I'm going to go design an amazing outfit, and I'm going to talk politics at the school board meeting or city council. You embody a true Southern woman. So even though you might be from New York, in my opinion, you are a Renaissance woman with all of the things going on, and I so appreciate you.
I used to say that I was a Jane of all trades, master of none, because I like to dabble in a lot of different things. There's a lot of different facets to what I enjoy. Some things that people would not expect, maybe. And
Good.
I think that is life. I think that is interesting. I think this whole mommy war of putting people in boxes does nothing to like self actualize women as whole people.
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky that I have such a wonderful group of women in my life here in real life who are also like 10 years older than me and content creators and multifaceted. I have a mom friend who's an influencer. She also DJs. She does nonprofit work, like just all across the board. So multifaceted, so interesting, so vibrant. And I'm so lucky to have that in real life. And I just hope that maybe I can be that for somebody online.
Yeah, I think it's amazing when you don't even realize that you are being a role model to people around, because you definitely are a role model to me. Even though you're younger than me, you can still be a role model, because I think it's so important, like you said, to get up, to get dressed, not every day, but to be all the things. We do not have to fit in a drawer, in a box, on a shelf. We can be all the things all the time, whenever we want to, not because we're supposed to. Some days
Absolutely.
we get up and we wear the leggings. Some days we get up and we make content with, I always say coffee stained teeth. Some
Oh,
days
yeah.
we have it all together. It is what it is. And we're allowed to show up all the ways we want to. And I think that you really embody that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think that's one of the great things that TikTok allowed when the space was so saturated with perfection. I think TikTok has allowed real people and real voices and real complexity into the social media sphere. And you can kind of see, like, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy, but you can kind of see the algorithm shifting a little bit, and the perfection coming out and the professional influencers coming in. And like, you can definitely see that. But there's still a good amount of us who like were just regular schmegular people during COVID who just shared their life and their views and managed to find a community on social media. And I think that's just super cool.
It's so cool. I just to bring up what you're talking about with the professional, there's a gal out there who was selling weight loss. Did you see this? The weight loss
I might have.
courses and all this stuff. Did you? But she was really on Ozempic the whole time.
Oh, I did. I did see that. Oh,
5 million people following her for weight loss information. And here she's, not that there's anything wrong with Ozempic. I've done entire series on my other podcast about weight loss, and you do you, but to sit there and sell
so important.
courses.
It's so important. And I think that's the next frontier of social media. I think just like we had in advertising and stuff like that, I think we're just behind on social media because it's so new. But I think the way that we're talking about kids on social media and disclosures for ads and disclosures for like any sort of marketing, I think this is coming. I think people are going to have to be safer online.
But one thing I love about TikTok, I will say the truth comes out usually.
People
Who
dig.
you are, they will find you. They will know if you're full of shit on TikTok. I don't know how they do it, but somehow, somewhere, someone figures it out.
A long
And
time and a lot of sleuthy skills for sure.
yeah, well, thank you so much. It's me, Lisa P,
Thank
on TikTok. Is that your same handle on Instagram?
It is. It's me, Lisa P, with like an underscore on TikTok and a dot on Instagram. I just couldn't get that underscore to happen on Instagram. So
No worry. Well, we will have all of that in the show notes. But thank you so very much for being on the TikTok Famous podcast. I so appreciate you. Everyone go check her out. And I will see you here next week with another guest.
thank
So
you
I'll
so
see you
much.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the TikTok Famous podcast with Meredith Willett. If you're loving the unfiltered stories and behind the scenes truths, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show. Until next time, let's get famous.